Hi everyone, it's OJ back with the last starter guide, and we're going to be taking a look at red. The problem with red, as I said in the last video, is that it's quite reliant on synergies for it to be successful. So usually if you don't have the majority of the cards that you need to for a red deck, it's kind of underwhelming to play that deck. So I tried using the burn archetype for this red deck. So for example, using cards like the Rebel Slinger, the Flame Burst, Cypher's Fodder, and the Blood Singer, just so that I have a better chance playing against players online when playing this deck. The key with burn is that you're not really trying to go for your opponent's face. You're trying to use the abilities that your creatures have to slowly burn down your opponent before they get to your face and manage to kill you. So without further ado, let's get into the first game and see how it goes. When we're starting out with this deck, we kind of want to use get some small creatures like the Brigand, for example. Cypher's Fodder is okay. I took him out just to see if I could get a Rebel Slinger or a Flame Spitter. But Cypher's Fodder is also a perfectly decent card to have at the start as well, especially when you play second, because you can play it on turn 1 and collect on the second turn. With the burn deck, you kind of want to be playing it more defensively than mid-range. You're not really trying to get to the opponent's face, so it's okay for you to sit back and collect from your own wells, especially when your opponent's rushing like here. I see that they're playing Elemental down the middle, so I decide to play a little bit more defensively. I've got a Cypher's Wrath in my hand as well, which is very useful because I can use that to deal with the Elemental. And here I just play a Brigand to the side, just so I can get some collection going. So on this turn there's not really much for me to do, so I just play a Flame Spitter proactively so I can possibly deal with something next turn if they play something. It decides to play Aurora's Disciple here, which is not really a good play unless they start buffing it insanely with a bunch of events. But even then, that's still kind of risky because they've only got 5 Faeria, so I can deal with it quite easily. And I have a Campfire in my hand, so this is going to be a nice trade for my Flame Spitter. I play the Brigand towards the middle, just in case they play another creature. I can deal with the Brigand, and I can use the Bloodsinger to collect from the right side. So they play another Aurora's Disciple, a bit further away from me this time, so it's a bit safer. Again, if I still have a Cypher's Wrath or even a Flame Burst next turn, I can deal with it. But I don't get it, unfortunately, so I just step my Brigand up to start going aggressive for it. I give it a preemptive Campfire as well, so that in case it uses a spell and trades with me, it would have to use 2 spells for it to trade with me. I mean, unfortunately, it gets choked, so it's kind of it's kind of a better trade for this guy. I wasted 2 cards for their 1 card, and it gets to buff their Aurora's Disciple. Now I'm in kind of a tricky position because I want to kill the Aurora's Disciple as soon as possible, but I don't have the cards to deal with it. I could draw, but I also want to collect Faeria at the same time, so I just play the Blazing Salamander. Hopefully the opponent doesn't buff it too much, so I can deal with it next turn. And they play the Twin Souls, which is fine. He used Clean Training to do trade with my Salamander, which isn't too great, honestly. As you can see, I'm burning him while all of these trades are happening in the meantime. He's already at 12 health and I haven't even touched his face yet. Here I just do a simple Flame Burst. I move my Bloodsinger to the right so he can't collect with the other Twin Soul. And then I just play a Mace Man so that I can react to whatever else the enemy plays next turn. Here I really want to play the Blazing Salamander, but I have to use the Power Will to make a Mountain if I want to hit the Twin Soul Spirit and the Manta in the middle. But I don't have enough Faeria, and I don't have any way I can collect Faeria from the board. So I just use a Blazing Salamander to kill the Twin Soul, just so I can keep my Bloodsinger alive, and I can dominate the right side of the board. I'm still in a very advantageous position because I've got 3 creatures on board, and we have the same amount of Faeria. Also, he's only single collecting this turn, and I'm going to be double collecting next turn, so I'm going to be quite ahead. So they play Windstorm Colossus, a really cheap one as well, but it's honestly it's too late. They can't really do anything at this point. I've already burnt them quite a lot. And actually this deck isn't too bad. It's quite a decent deck. It's just that this player was playing it rush when they should have just played it mid-range and should have just taken a side and collected Faeria. If they had the Faeria to do what they wanted to do, I would have a lot harder time dealing with this deck. Playing the Disciples as well too early and too close to my enemies was also a really big mistake, because I can clear them before they can get too big for me. But anyway, let's get on to the next game. Okay, we're in the second game. We have pretty decent hand at the moment. You can keep this, to be honest. I decided to go for something more burny, so I take up the Mace Man and I get a Rebel Slinger and Flame Burst, which is quite nice for me. Flame Burst is nice to have in the starting hand because it can deal with a lot of early game collectors. Unfortunately not this Sturdy Shell, so I just want to play on the same side. I get the Brigand on the left side so I can start collecting. And this player makes a huge mistake here, and they play a Mountain before they collect with the Sturdy Shell, so it can't collect, and they lose out on 1 Faeria this turn. I keep doing what I'm doing. I played the Underground Brigand. I mean, I could play the Rebel Slinger now. It honestly doesn't really matter too much, because you're only really using it as a collection that does 2 damage to the enemy face. Because they made a second Mountain, I'm actually really comfortable with this, because they can't enchant the Sturdy Shell, and I can get a basically free 2 Faeria from this combat that I'm about to do onto the Sturdy Shell. I don't even Flame Burst to kill it off, because it's not really worth it, since it's a 2 Faeria creature. Spending 3 Faeria on it isn't really what I want to do, especially that it's not been enchanted. I don't think there's any need. So I play the Rebel Slinger just so I can get a collection next turn. I could also step the Brigand up onto the left to collect instead, but by putting the Rebel Slinger on the left, I've got more options for the Underground Brigand now. And I play the Bloodsinger before I kill off the Sturdy Shell, just so that I can get that extra damage off. And I get a lot of value out of this Sturdy Shell, because I get 2 triggers off the Underground Brigand, which is 4 Faeria, and the 1 trigger from the Shed and Brooch, which gives an extra 2 damage, plus the extra damage from it dying. So I've got a few options here. I can play Blazing Salamander and hit him with the Rebel Slinger, but it requires me to make an extra land. So instead I draw and I hit him with the Shed and Brute and use the Flame Spit to finish off the Tyrannix. I also use the Flame Burst to kill off the Spring Mochi, so it doesn't really collect. It lets me dominate the left side a little bit better. Anything they play down now is quite vulnerable to my Rebel Slinger and my Shed and Brute. I think here I just trade off the Gabriel Commander, because my Shed and Brute has got a lot of value already, and I just play the Blazing Salamander just so I can kill off this Flame Spitter, and now they don't really have anything on board. And of course I play an extra Mace Man. Now here I was worried that they were going to play something really huge like a Gem Shell Tortoise or Ice Rock Behemoth. It doesn't seem like they're doing that. They're playing a blue-red 7s deck, but they're also playing a lot of really small cards like the Flame Spitter and the Imperial Guard, which doesn't really make sense. It's probably because they don't have enough cards right now to make that deck fully, but it kind of shows that you need that synergy, otherwise it's too weak of a deck to play. See, they're not really getting much value out of their Gabrians. The Gabrian Archon kind of needs a lot of 7s in the deck for it to be to have its full potential. So I just finish off here, and we can move on to the third game. Not really much to say here. Going for the same kind of cards again. I get a Bloodsinger, Cypher's Fodder, and Rebel Slinger. All really good starting cards. I probably want to play the Cypher's Fodder or Rebel Slinger first. I don't really want to play a Bloodsinger first, in case they play something quite aggressive. As you see, they rush. So I decide to play the Cypher's Fodder and see if they play anything in the middle tile. If they do that, then I can trade in. Obviously playing the Bloodsinger first so that I get the extra 1 damage. They don't seem to play anything on turn 2, which is fine. I just play the Rebel Slinger just so that I can get the 2 damage to face. This enemy turns out to be playing a neutral deck, which in theory I still win, but it's still quite annoying for me because they have a lot of Imperial Guards, which heals them for 2 health, and that's really annoying because I have a Rebel Slinger which does 2 damage, and it's only a 2/2. So the Imperial Guard in this matchup is actually a lot stronger than it usually is, because it kind of makes my Rebel Slingers useless. But I just build onto the right side so I can go for double collection. I play an Imperial Guard so I can collect that enemy well, hoping that I can step aggressively and make an aggressive land if I need to. This game turns out to be quite long since I'm trying to burn through all of this healing that this guy's doing. But since they're not really taking control of the board, which is what you want to do against burn, is like you want to take control of the board, otherwise they're going to burn you too quickly and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. If you just leave them to do what they want to do on the board, you're going to die no matter how much healing you have. End up playing the Daring Adventurer, which is fairly strong here, but I'm still able to clear it. So yeah, luckily I get a Campfire and a Flame Burst so that I can kill it this turn. And that means that they're only single collecting next turn, and I have more control of the right side now. They played the Freedom Fight to clear the Rebel Slinger, which is fine. I still double collect this turn, and I get to clear it with the Cypher's Wrath. So for me, that's not really too much of a problem. I just play another Cypher's Fodder to proactively counter anything that they play next turn. The problem is with neutral is that a lot of these cards are really underwhelming. You don't really want to play neutral unless you're trying to rush. Even then, it's not really that great. Neutral cards are more meant to fill in gaps that other colors don't have. For example, for blue, you'd run Emperor's Command. I mean, Emperor's Command is actually a really good card in general, but you run Emperor's Command in blue for healing, because you don't really have healing in blue, and for semi-removal or taking better trades. Now, I'm worried about the Imperial Guard on the left side, so I put down a Shed and Brute. So if it wants to double collect, it can't really double collect without dying next turn. And also the problem with this enemy is that they're using Emperor's Commands to clear my creatures when they should be really using it to heal themselves. I think if they heal themselves, they have a much better chance of surviving. And they also use neutrals for no reason. Like, using these neutrals here to is actually is worse than not playing any neutrals at all and just drawing, since I don't have to make lands now to step on and kill his Imperial Guard. So even though I'm really far away from my creatures are really far away from his face, it doesn't matter because I'm playing burn, right? I get to do damage to his face regardless of where I am on the map, on the board. Which is also another reason why you don't really want to be playing so many neutrals to block lands and stuff like that. With red, you can just counteract it by burn. With yellow, you can just counteract it by movement tricks and flying creatures. They don't really care about how many lands you have. With green, if they have one single forest that's near you, they can just teleport all their creatures to it. And blue has jump anyway, so they're quite mobile on the board, and they have land movement as well. Okay, this is kind of over, so I'm just gonna move on to the last game. This goes on for like another 2 minutes, I think, which is kind of weird. Here's the last game, and I decided to remove Blazing Salamander and Cypher's Wrath just so I can get some better early game cards. Maceman's fine, to be honest, so I just stick with that Maceman. I see that he's playing quite defensively, so I go for a more aggressive side. I play triple neutral just so that I can get my Maceman into a more aggressive spot turn 2. If he wants to play something at the well in front of his farm boy, I can trade it with the Maceman. I ended up playing a CISO, which is really unfortunate because I can't deal with that with my Maceman. It's actually a really bad trade for me, so I bring my Maceman back and just wait another turn to see what else he plays and see what other cards I get as well. So for green, to play against green as red is really bad since they have really high health creatures and it's really hard for you to deal with them, especially when you're playing burn, because green has a lot of healing cards as well, such as Ruin's Guidance and the Tiki Healer. So this turn I have to go and deal with the Seed Sower. I can't really be playing too defensively, so I end up stepping my Maceman up to collect and playing another Maceman so that he can't step into double collection. And they play Ancient Herald, which is really unfortunate because they're both two really high health creatures I can't really deal with. I don't actually have any creatures that deal 6 damage, so a lot of the times I'm going to have to double trade, which is not favourable. Luckily I get a Blazing Salamander, so I can actually clear these 2 creatures this turn, so that's quite lucky for me. And then I just play the Cypher's Wrath on the farm boy, just so that I have a bit more control on the left side. I think burn must be quite popular in these ranks because I see a lot of Imperial Guards being played. As you can see here, this guy is playing Hold the Line. Hold the Line isn't too great, to be honest. You would just rather if you're playing green, I would just recommend you play healing creatures if that's what you want, or just taunt creatures. There's a lot better taunt and healing creatures in green. So I don't see why you would play Hold the Line or Imperial Guards in this deck. So I've got an option to Flame Burst the Imperial Guard just so that I keep getting control. Also so I can double collect this turn, because obviously the taunt is stopping my Salamander from collecting on the bottom left well. I also have a Bloodsinger now, but since my mountains are quite near to the enemy, I don't really want to be playing it this turn, especially since I won't be able to collect if I do. And again, I play another Brigand down just so that I can react to whatever else this opponent is playing this turn. Hopefully I can get a Derelict Tower or a Flame Spitter for that Village Elder on the right hand side, because it is collecting quite a fair amount, although I am out collecting, so I'm not in trouble too much. Another Imperial Guard comes down, which is fine. If they wanted to put the Imperial Guard down, I would have put it on the lake just below where they placed it, just so that I would have to create another mountain if I wanted to play another creature. So now I can step up my Salamander and trade and get the trigger off the Bloodsinger, and just play another Rebel Slinger, just so that I get more damage to face, since they're healing quite a lot. Also, it can deal with anything that they play on the right hand side. Now they play the Imperial Guard on the right hand side. I actually don't really want to deal with it, because I don't want him to heal for 2 health. So I end up just moving my Rebel Slinger onto the left hand side and just keep dominating that side. I'm not even too bothered if they move it in and attack my face, because it's only 2 damage, right? It's not gonna kill me in 5 turns, so it'll be fine. And I just clear this Faeria with my Brigand and my Salamander. Use the flame. Now I get the Flame Spitter and use it on the Village Elder, which is good for me. And now I'm in a much better position to start playing aggressively now. I played the Underground Brigand just so that I have more creatures to step on the lands. If I step on his lands, it means that they have less options to play creatures. This enemy decides to play a forest in the middle. I would have preferred it if they played it. Well, I think it would have been better if they played it on the right, so that the Imperial Guard could step in, but they decide not to. I double neutral here just so that I can get an aggressive mountain next turn, just to speed this up, because this is quite slow, honestly. Again, you can see them double neutraling for not really much reason, and therefore they can't draw, or they can't +1 Faeria to play better cards. Here is another full clear. Well, not full clear, but I can clear the boar and the Runin as well. I don't really want this Runin to hit my face, because it's a fair amount of value, so I just end up trading a lot of my creatures into it. But that's fine, since I already have a lot of creatures on board, and I still have 9 Faerias to spend. I do want to spend this Faeria, to be honest. Decide to clear the Farm Boy as well with the Salamander, just so that he can't double collect next turn. I mean, now they're just playing cards that make no sense. Obviously that 1/1's going to get traded immediately by that Brigand, and that's going to put him down to 6 health. And then the two damage from my Salamander is going to put him down to 4 health, and now there's not really much that they can do in this situation. They pretty much lost the game. So let's wrap up this game for now and talk about maybe some strats that we can think about when with improving this deck and other stuff as well. So we've used this red deck in a few games, and they've been kind of successful. We've actually beaten a few decks that have better synergies than this one, but it's only because that the opponent played badly. If you're playing against an opponent that knows what they're doing, it's kind of hard to win with these kind of decks, like these beginner decks that I've been piloting for the past few videos. For this red starter deck that I've made, cards such as Hellfire could be useful to increase the burn damage that you do to your opponent, although it's quite expensive, so you have to worry about that. Hellfire is not really a card that you want to play when there's a lot of high health creatures on board. You kind of want to play it when there's either only like 1 or 2 creatures on board, or all the creatures are really low health. Another card you can consider is a Grimguard. It's like a Shed Brute, but a little bit cheaper, so you can play it out. If you don't have enough Faeria, you can play a Grimguard instead of a Shed Brute. A Blood Obelisk is also another burn card that works better with combat, actually, so maybe you don't want to use it in your burn deck if you're using a lot of removal like Flame Burst and Cypher's Wrath, but still something that you can consider. If you don't want to go the burn route, because I see a lot of people think it's not a very fun deck to play against or play as, you can consider the combat route. So like for example, like the Shed and Brute is still considered a combat card, as well as the Grimguard. You can also consider the Herald of War, which synergizes well with other combat creatures. Obviously, Underground Brigand and Underground Boss are really good combat cards as well, because they're quite good value for what they are. If you are going combat, you should probably consider Gift of Steel, because it's a very good buff for your combat creatures. There's also another archetype called Sevens, which works well in red, because you have the Ogre Dance and the Bold Bargainer as well to discount your cards. So that wraps up for the beginner guides. Thank you for watching. I want to start working towards more directed topics, such as archetypes, and thinking about why certain cards are designed a certain way. So hopefully I can get those videos out. They're going to be a little bit better. They're going to be less improvised like these decks, like these videos. Hopefully I can like write a script for them and everything. So until then, I'll see you guys soon. And yeah, thank you for watching.